So this is actually what they call systematic sampling. This one is where basically if you have them all, I guess, in a list or whatever, and you pick like every nth member of the population to form the sample. Again, you would have to make sure you have them in a list, though. You know, everyone in the population. I mean, how could you form that list? I don't know, but somehow you would have to have that. Okay, so we do have different ways of forming a sample, you know, from a population. Okay. There are some techniques that are not good to use, though, as I have here. One of them is what we call convenience sampling. And that's when you just that's just when you form your samples by selecting whatever's convenient. In other words, you're getting data that's easily available. The problem with that, though, is that the data could be very biased. I mean, it might be all that you have, though, so you might have no choice. With convenience sampling, though, you're just choosing whatever, you're just selecting whoever is convenient. That's how you conveniently form your samples. That's a good way of saying it. So for instance, you have an example here. Like, for instance, you might, if you want to know what the city thinks about raising taxes to build a new school, you know, you might stop by the senior citizen center, you know, for convenience. Or maybe they don't go out much, I don't know. You might stop by there and they're easy to get to, you know, you ask them. Although the problem with that, though, is that data may not be helpful. Mostly because, you know, the senior citizens might not be taking care of kids anymore. So they may not have much of a say when it comes to building a new school. Or if you're doing this, I guess, in the summer and you go up to the campus and ask only the college students staying on campus in the summer. I mean, it's a lot less, but you know, that's going to be very biased because you're not getting every college student. Another one is volunteer response sampling. You know, that's when you ask them to when they volunteer to participate. You allow them to volunteer, in other words. I have some other examples here, like for instance, if you after reading a website, there's a survey there asking you to give your opinion on something, you know, because you can volunteer to answer or you don't have to. You know, here's another example of convenience sampling. You're standing on a street corner or you're at a mall or whatever, and you interview the first 100 people that agree to speak with you. But again, if they're volunteering, you know, it's going to be very biased, though. Also because the people that volunteer are the ones who are going to have a very strong opinion. So, but you really want to get as many opinions from the population as you can. Then I put in some other examples. I figured it would be good to go through those. For instance, this is one where every 20th soup can is taken off an assembly line, right? You know, and they're checking it for defects. So it's every 20th, right? Because of that, that would be systematic sampling, right? If you go back to systematic, every nth member of the population. So because of that, every nth member, every 20th soup can. So that would be systematic sampling. The next one below, hopefully you can see it's a simple random sample. I mean, I wrote it down here anyway, but even if I didn't write it down, mostly because with the prize, every ticket that they select is equally likely, especially if they're blindfolding the person, which I wrote down that they do. So that's one example. Okay, so we have those examples there. Okay. This one, right? The top one, that is, what is that? That's a cluster sampling. That's right, all from some. In other words, you're getting, I don't remember. Okay. You're choosing some city blocks and you're getting, not city blocks, excuse me, you're choosing some schools and you're asking all the kids in the school. So. Okay. Next one here, your viewers of a new show, they're asked to vote on what they think about the show on the show's website. Well, again, that's volunteering. Voluntary responses, so it's volunteering. Not the best way to proceed anyway, because, they have the opportunity to volunteer. Here, you're choosing a sample to select 25 men and 35 women, but notice, though, they're breaking up the population into two groups, men and women. And they're taking some from each, so that's why we have stratified sampling. It's not like here with the children where they're choosing at random certain schools, but then they're asking or selecting, I guess, every child in the school. That's all from some schools, but all the children in those schools. The clusters would be the schools then. Here, it's some from all, some men, some women. All right. So those are different ways they can actually form a sample. But if you remember, though, as I said, you do have to be careful with forming your sample. You do have to be a little bit careful, though. Things can go wrong if you're not careful. You can have what's called the sampling bias. As I said already, that's when the sample, is not representative of the population. Again, you could, with the SUNY Oneonta college students, right? That's, for instance, if you only ask seniors, for instance, how many hours a week they read, or if you only ask physics majors, and then generalize that to the whole population. We'll try to, at least. Well, it's not going to work because there's sampling bias. And also volunteers, that also can be a problem. Because if everyone in the sample is a volunteer, you're not getting everyone's opinion, just the ones that want to tell you their opinion. The ones who want to tell you, the volunteers, those are the ones that might have a very strong opinion. And then there's a self-interest study. That occurs when the researchers have an interest or an agenda, as they put it, in the outcome of the study. They're publishing a study to try and make their product look good. You might see that just like the example I have here. This one's made up. I made this one up, that Gatorade released a study saying if you drink their Gatorade, your math scores will go up. I think the book had one with, I think it was Wrigley Company, a company that makes chewing gum. They say that if you chew their gum, then your math scores will get better. Something like that would be a self-interest study. It's not necessarily false, but it would definitely warrant more scrutiny. Extra scrutiny or more study, so to say. You might see it from, let's say, I'm trying to think, like a cereal company, I guess, that says, studies show that if you eat this kind of cereal, you'll have healthier kids or something. I don't know, something like that. Self-interest, they have an agenda. They can benefit by publishing the study. So these are different ways a study can get hurt, so to say. There's also these ways as well. There's response bias. How do you know when the people respond to a survey if they're being truthful or not? They may lie, or they may not be lying, but their answers might be wrong. I put one example here with going to the doctor. Some people may hate going to the doctor, but they say they do to make themselves look good. Another one I could think of like this is, if you ask people, how often do you drink alcohol, I guess? They might lie, even though they might lie to make themselves look good. Another one is here, a lack of anonymity, a perceived lack of anonymity. They fear about giving an honest response. I guess that kind of ties in with what I said before. The survey here, they might lie because they're afraid that it might make them look bad. Here's another example related to that. If you're given a survey about a company you work for, you might mess up your results a bit to make the company look good because you're afraid they'll come after you. And then they have this non-response bias one. When you refuse to participate in the study. You might get that. I know, for instance, I get that from Spectrum sometimes. They'll call me up and ask if they can ask me a survey about how a conversation I had with their customer service went, something like that. I might not want to answer. I might not want to answer it. So I'll just hang up the phone or something. Something like that. That's non-response bias. That can hurt a study. I think telemarketers might try that also. They might call you up and ask for your opinion on something, but if you don't respond, that can lead to non-response bias. So there's a lot of different kind of bias that you can have from a study.